Let's hit the high
There we go. Hi, it's Nancy Earl, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I've got a really awesome guy here today. I have James Szubski here. Szubski, is that right? Szubski?
Shoob-skee, yes.
I don't
No one
want to,
gets it right the first time.
man, I don't want to boss. I thought I was going to get it right. I'm so glad you're here. You guys, welcome to the High Road, first of all, let me say. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. I thought you were talking to the audience.
Talking to you. And I'm just happy you're here. You guys, this is going to be a fun one today. We're going to talk about paranormal activity in the Columbia River Gorge. It's in Washington State. And we're going to talk about stuff that I don't know so much about. I've never heard of the Klickitat tip. How do you
The
Klickitat
Klickitat
Ape
Ape
Cat?
Cat.
Is that what it
Yeah,
is? All
the
right.
Klickitat Ape Cat.
Yeah, I've never heard of it before. It should be really exciting. We're going to talk about Sasquatch, the UFOs, portals, which I'm really into portals, and we'll get his take on that, and some small humanoids. So there's a lot of activity going on in this gorge, and James is going to hip us to what's happening. So before we get into it, and I even read his bio, I want to say my new book came out December 1st. I have to promote it. I'm so grateful to the publisher, Collective Inc., for putting it out there. What's really been cool and what I want to share with the audience very quickly is that I've been doing a lot of radio shows and a lot of podcasts lately from Australia to the UK to Los Angeles, is wherever. But what's really been interesting is it's either the host or I've been doing live, readings, or the audience who has sent me messages that they're connecting with their angels. And this is why I wrote the book. And so it's been really, it's only been out since December 1st, but I want to say the angels are connecting with people out there. And this book is going to make a difference. It is called A Guide to Angel Communication and Spiritual Laws. I teach the spiritual laws. I have Archangel Gabriel, letters from Gabriel to humanity in here. I go through how to connect with God, the divine source, spirit, how to connect with the earth energies, and how to connect with your guardian angels. So I hope you guys will pick it up. I'm just very excited and pleased that people are doing it. So that's kind of my big yay. All right. So that's why I wrote it, and I just hope everybody will check it out. Now, James is here. I want to give a little background. He's the chief operating officer of Margie's Outdoor Store. It's located deep, like I said, within the Columbia River Gorge in Washington State. Back in 2002, his store inhabited a paranormal reporting program, which has now received well over 100 reports of strange activity, you guys, in the Gorge area. Now, James is a former volunteer search and rescue EMT. He's a wildlife firefighter, a mountain guide, and a highly decorated U.S. Army infantry veteran. So he's earned a degree in communications from the Evergreen State College, and he's enjoyed a decade-long career in the field working for companies like Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Dungeons and Dragons. That's pretty cool. And Magic the Gathering. He currently volunteers his time as the leader of the Klickitat Ape Cat research team. Easy for me to say. I'm arguing with them. Well, I want to hear your story because this is cool. I've never had anybody on the show to talk about this stuff. So tell us what happened. Like, I want to know from the beginning. You got there, you're in the store, you go to the gorge. What's the first thing you see?
Well, first of all, I have to say that that bio is a little outdated. We now have over 370 reports in
Oh,
the store. Yeah.
all right.
And it all came about coming up on 4 years ago. My mother-in-law passed away, and she had a collection of businesses down here in the gorge. And so my wife and I decided to take up the family businesses. And one of them was this store. And we did some updates and made a new logo. And out of whim, I put a little Sasquatch in the logo. Well, people started coming in right away and sort of whispering about these amazing experiences they were having in the wilderness areas around here. Now, and so that's kind of how this whole reporting program started. And it has been just a delight, like an amazing experience. What we did was once these people started coming in, I put up a big sign in the window that said, "File your paranormal reports here. You know, whether it's Sasquatch or UFO or ghost, we want to hear about it." And I instructed all of my employees that we were going to treat everyone who came in with the utmost respect, and we were going to act as though everything that they were saying was their actual experience. We were going to treat them like intelligent adults and just see what there was to see. And because of some of the experiences I've had in my life, I know that ordinary people have extraordinary experiences all the time.
Right.
And we go through a process of normalization where we try to talk ourselves out of what we've seen. There's social pressures about, people thinking you're crazy or whatever. And so we wanted to be a safe place where you could tell your stories.
Right.
And oh my gosh, we had so many, and they span a wide gamut. Of course, we have stories of cryptids. So that's things like Sasquatch and this Klickitat Ape Cat creature. But the Gorge has got a long history of that kind of stuff. In fact, it was in the Gorge where the first Bigfoot protection legislation was ever passed.
Really?
And yeah, in Skamania County, where my home is, it is a felony to shoot a Bigfoot.
I would hope
And
so.
yeah, if
That's
you
cool.
if the coroner determines that it's a humanoid, you'll be charged with manslaughter. And so
Oh,
they take it very seriously out here. And that's been since 1968. But there's also so Washington State is the number one state for Bigfoot sightings per capita, but we're also the number one state for UFO sightings. And the very first UFO sighting that sort of kicked off America's love affair with flying saucers happened right here. It was a guy named Kenneth Arnold in June of 1947. He's flying a private plane over the Cascade Mountains, and he saw nine UFOs flying from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams, and Mount Adams is in our backyard. And so it got picked up by the newspapers, and America fell in love with UFOs. And then the very next month was the Roswell crash, and the
yeah.
rest is history.
And I'm
But
from
that
New
all,
Mexico, so I've been to Roswell.
oh,
That's
so you know
right.
all about it.
I do, but
Um,
let me ask you something really quick. I just a couple questions, if you don't mind. The first thing that comes to mind is when you told your employees and you decided to get people's accounts, was that intuitively guided or where did that come from? Like, why did you decide to do that?
well, I'm intensely curious about this stuff. And the Gorge is a magical place. And it might help you and your audience for me to paint a picture of what this place is like.
Yeah, go for it.
So, the Columbia River is the largest river in North or South America that flows into the Pacific Ocean. And it winds where the gorge is literally through the Cascade Mountains. And just for a sense of scope and scale, the Cascade Mountains start in British Columbia. They extend through Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. It's about 80,000 square miles. So you're talking about an area that's the size of the 10 smallest states combined. And it is a vast and rugged wilderness area. It is like an ocean of trees and mountains.
Wow.
Um, the Cascade Mountains themselves are is a volcanic range, and so within 35 miles of the store, there are three stratovolcanoes that are perpetually covered with glaciers all year round. It's Mount Adams, Mount Hood, and Mount St. Helens, and of course, Mount St. Helens famously erupted in 1980.
Right.
And so the gorge winds its way through the mountains, and it is uh, the only sea level passage through these mountains. And so you can go from basically sea level to 3,000 feet in less than half a mile in some areas.
Oh, wow.
And it is stunningly beautiful. In fact, in the 1980s, the US Congress got together and in a rare moment of bipartisanship created the country's first national scenic area. And what it does is it makes this place as protected as a national park, but people can still live and work here. So it's a really unique setup. The western half of the mountains is like a classic Pacific Northwest rainforest, so brooding and moody and filled with deep forests. And on that side of the mountains, we have over 90 named waterfalls. Some of them are
Oh my
600
God.
feet tall. Yeah, it
Wow.
is just remarkably beautiful. And of course, there's wildlife everywhere.
Yeah.
But as you get to the eastern side of the gorge, and the gorge is about 80 miles long,
Okay.
it starts to turn into high plains desert. Those mountains form a rain shadow. And so you start to see like sagebrush deserts, classic flat top mesas and buttes. And it's like this austere, uh, very beautiful, very almost spiritual type of a place.
Yeah. I'm picking up. I'm just going to ask you this because I'm an intuitive and I just keep picking up that, and doesn't take an intuitive, but I just know the ETs are in the mountains,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah.
And so, I mean,
It's
that's
yeah.
usually what the deal is, they're coming and they're going underground. Are they in all the mountains, you think, or do you think there's one particular one that they're in, or what do you
There
feel?
is one particular one out here that and it's interesting you mentioned under the mountains. There are over 600 caves in the area as
I'm
well.
sure. I'm
And
sure.
so it is like the volcanic activity out here has created this vast network of underground tunnels and things like that. Some of them are enormous, really cool to explore. But Mount Adams is famously
Okay.
one of the biggest UFO hotspots in the country. In fact, what we're learning is that the gorge itself is probably the most active paranormal hotspot in all of North America. And so
Why do
it's
you
interesting you
think?
talk about angels
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
because there is Mount Adams. People have been watching UFOs fly around Mount Adams for decades, and there's a place called ECETI Ranch, which is right at sort of the base of the mountain. And James Gilliland has, and ECETI stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Okay.
And for decades, James Gilliland has invited people out to his property, and they come from all over the world and they watch UFOs and UAPs fly around Mount Adams all
Yeah,
night long.
yeah,
They've got tons of videos on their website. If you go to eceti.org, you can
yeah.
see them.
I've heard of this guy. I've heard of it. I've seen this before. Yes, but
Yeah.
what's the connection with the angels?
Well, this is a really interesting story. So there's a lot of interesting people that I've met
I'm sure.
doing what I do, right?
Yeah.
And one of the guys that I've met, he was a psychic spy. And so basically he does remote viewing.
Mhm.
And so he's worked with counterterrorism organizations and a lot of different US government organizations.
Mhm.
And so he knows the professional techniques the CIA used. In fact, he trains people on how to use them himself. And so Mount Adams is, like I said, it's a stratovolcano. I think it's over 11,000 feet tall.
Mhm.
And there's so much UFO activity out there. It's almost impossible to come out here and not see something. And there are pictures of a, like a pyramid of light on one quadrant of the mountain. Um, and you can see this phenomenon at certain times of the year. Well, he has done remote viewing on this site, and with his classes, he's used it as a target for many of his students. Like they don't know what they're looking at. They just get basically a number. This is your target. And then they start coming up with what they're doing. And so then, the remote view this image, and the next one might be the Eiffel Tower or the Space
Yeah.
Needle in Seattle or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he's had over 50 students and colleagues and other professional remote viewers look at this, and they all seem to have the same kind of experience. They're all saying that this is a portal. And the terms that they come up for, like normally when he has them remote view any kind of UFO or UAP activity, they come back with words like craft or vehicles or ships. When they remote view this spot, they come back and the phenomena around it with terms like chariots and vimana and these sort of more ancient spiritual terms. And what the picture is emerging from more than 50 of these remote viewing reports is that um, basically this is some type of portal to a higher dimensional realm. And um, the craft that fly around it are basically these angelic beings that are protecting this portal. And what's even more interesting is we've had many reports in the store of military aircraft pursuing some of these things. Oftentimes they're black choppers that seem to be silenced in some way, or a big C-130 transport planes uh, trying to make contact with these things. And so
You mean the angels?
well, whatever the phenomenon is out there, like
Okay.
I can't
They're
tell you what
they're
they
flying
think.
around it, so the ship's coming in and trying to figure out what these things are, is what you're
That's
saying.
what it seems like is happening. And again,
Okay.
like all I can do is tell you what people are reporting to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In terms of we can speculate on what they're doing or why they're
Yeah,
doing it.
right?
And so there are a lot of reports that there are bases within the mountains where these UFO reside. And there are other folks here in the gorge who believe that the gorge is a vortex, and we can talk about the incredibly unique geology and the really unusual electromagnetic environment we have out here. And they believe that uh, there's some type of acceleration going on right now,
Mhm.
and that certain people are being drawn to the gorge, and that
Energetic.
people,
Yeah. Yeah. I want to stop you really quick and just ask a quick question. So, and God, you have such great information, but I want to ask you a couple things. First of all, the rock formations. I'm really into energy. I wrote a book on energy. I feel like intuitively too, I keep picking up as I was reading your information, even preparing for the show. I wanted to ask you what kind of rock is there? It feels like to me that rock has this energy and it's holding the energy. What kind is it? Granite? What is there?
well, if you're ready for a little geology lesson, I've
Yeah,
got,
well,
this
I
is
mean,
like a
yeah, make it brief.
so
I'm just, yeah, I'm.
well, the gorge is geologically unique in all of the world. And when we look at the government issued maps, there are warnings on them in bright pink letters that say your magnetic compass readings will be off in this area. And the reason for that is that so the river has been flowing here for over 20 million years. But about 17 million years ago, a giant fissure opened in the earth at the Washington-Idaho border. And enormous volumes of lava poured out of it, like the kind of lava you see at Kilauea. And it flowed through the ancient Columbia River Valley, filled it up, and flowed 300 miles all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And uh, over the course of about 2 million years, there were over 300 eruptive events. So much lava came out of this thing that if you evenly distributed it over the whole United States, it would bury the lower 48 states in 60 feet of lava. So we're talking enormous quantities. But what's interesting here is that that lava flowed and then it would begin to cool, and all of its magnetic material would orient towards the Earth's North Pole. Now, and then it would harden and it would get locked in place. Then 1,000 years would pass, another great flow would come through, and the Earth's North Pole will have wandered in the past 100 years. Our pole has wandered 700 miles, and so once the that second layer would come in, its stuff would cool, but it would orient to the new North Pole. So we've got layer upon layer upon layer of these rocks. They're basalt. They're the columnar basalt,
Directing
like you see.
itself. So wait a minute, it's directing itself like like it's pointing towards where the North Pole would be. All by
Yeah. So
energy,
like,
the energy is vibing that way, is what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the
All right.
geologic record, you've got this layer cake of rock, and each layer has a unique magnetic signature to it
I
because
see.
of how it formed and how it cooled.
Right.
So you've got this crazy thing, and then the Cascade Mountains started forming, and they started buckling and bending all that stuff with the pressures coming up from underneath, forming these volcanoes, and it would bend and buckle all of those layers, right? And so that creates this really weird electromagnetic environment. And then 15,000 years ago, there was this enormous flood. The biggest flood that man is aware of on Earth occurred here in Washington State. Apparently, there was some type of enormous lake up in Missoula, Montana, held back by an ice dam. This was during the Ice Age. Well, that dam failed, and an enormous wall of water washed across Washington State that was 300 feet deep, destroying everything in its path. But when it got to the mouth of the gorge, it got constrained at a place called Wallula Gap and then started rocketing down the gorge. And it is traveling at 60 to 70 miles an hour. It's carrying trees and boulders and icebergs and everything, and it is completely scouring the gorge. And so and in the gorge, like where my store is, the waters were over 800 feet deep, and it just obliterated everything.
Wow.
But what it did was it scoured those rock faces, and so all of those layers are exposed like a live wire now.
Really?
And yeah, and so when you come to the gorge, even if you don't see a UFO or a Sasquatch or a ghost or a portal or anything like that, you know it is inescapable that you are in a magical, energetic place. If you can just be calm and sit for just a moment, um, you feel it like it is palpable. And so there's a really unique environment here because of all these truly epic, titanic geologic forces and like literal cataclysms and apocalypses that happened here. Apocalypses of fire and apocalypses of water. And so And the other thing is that the Columbia River um, has some of the oldest archaeological sites in all of North America. They have found bodies here that are 10,000 years old. And because the Columbia River is such a productive environment, millions of salmon run through this river. For millennia upon millennia, it was a gathering place for Native Americans. And there are burial sites and spiritual places all over the place. Many of the mountains here have basically these rock nests on them where young Native Americans would come for their vision quests to meet their spirit animals. And
Wow.
so the whole place is just soaked with this unique energies. And when you come out here, you can feel it. Now, what's interesting, if you look at it from a scientific perspective, is that we are discovering that our brains have magnetite crystals in them. In fact, over 1 billion crystals are in our brains. Magnetite is one of the most magnetically reactive materials on Earth, and they are in these structures called magnetosomes. They're basically these sheaths that sit alongside of our brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus and the temporal lobes. And they're stacked up. And when they encounter magnetic fields, they torque and have a physical influence on our brain cells. Back in the 80s and 90s, Dr. Michael Persinger up at Laurentide University in Ontario, Canada, did studies to see what would happen if you manipulated magnetic fields around a human brain. And he created this helmet that had these solenoids in it, and he could cycle different magnetic fields through it. And his research was impeccable and repeatable and is not questioned. Um, and he was able to induce paranormal-like experiences in people by manipulating magnetic fields around their brains. And so many people would have a sensed presence. They would feel like there was another conscious entity uh, present with them when under the influence of these
That's
magnetic
their
fields.
angel.
Exactly. Um,
Oh my God, I got to stop you a second really quick because this is really hitting home with me. And you are so knowledgeable, James. God bless you for coming on the show today and telling us all this. As you're telling me this, okay, I got to stop you here because you're talking about the crystals in our brain. We're talking about the energy. First of all, let me say that your energy has been really affected by this place because I pick it up like it's like your energy is enormous from this. You've like totally attached. I love it. And you're totally into it and you've got a love for this place and I can feel that. But what I want to say is, as you're talking about the crystals in our brain, it goes back to what I'm teaching is connecting with the divine spirit, connecting with that source, because it's the crystals when we bring in the light. I teach people to bring in the light through the crown
mhm.
chakra and bring it down. So the crystals is what helps us pick up the signal.
Hmm. Well, it's a really interesting thing that you're saying. I think that you're very correct in that. And so
Thank you.
what these magnetite crystals are, and to be clear, these are well researched. They're known by science. You've heard of animals that are able to navigate over long distances, and they've
Mhm.
wondered how they can do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's clear that animals are using these magnetite crystals as a sense organ so that they can determine magnetic north and, travel very long distances. So this is
That makes sense.
established science. What's
Yeah.
interesting about what you're saying is that there's spirit and it has to interface with our physical bodies in some ways. And this is a possible mechanism that we can study and understand and
Right.
verify for all those science folks that yes, there are ways that energies can impact our brains in really
Positive way.
very positive ways, in ways that we currently dismissed or didn't understand, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
it's exciting in that regard. And so with this study from Dr. Persinger, you could ask yourself, okay, so is it that people are getting influenced by these magnetic fields here in the gorge? And again, they're known to be strong and they're known to impact compasses. Um, so are people having some type of personal hallucination? Is it some kind of local disruption or is it something bigger than that?
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is I have photographic evidence of um, UFOs and glowing orbs. We see that a lot. We have multi-party sightings where multiple people are having the same experience. We have hair samples, we have footprints, we have all these different physical pieces of evidence. And so a personal hallucination is not going to show up on a photograph. It's not
No.
going to affect multiple people at the same time.
Well,
And
James,
so what,
do you think the veil is thinner there, and that's why we're able to see, or because energetically, that's
well,
what
that could be, I
I'm
think that there's
wondering.
something to that. So imagine, so think about it like a radio wave, right?
Right, right.
So if you were in your car and every day you got in your car, it was tuned to a country music station, and you didn't know that you could adjust the
The
tuner.
rock,
And
yeah.
so you just felt like, okay, country music is reality, right? Like this is what you hear when you drive
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
And then one day, your electromagnetic tuner got adjusted slightly, and suddenly you're not hearing country music, you're hearing classical music, or you're hearing rock and roll music, or you're hearing talk radio. Those are all signals that have been present in the environment all along. It's just that your tuner wasn't set to receive them.
Right.
And what I think is happening here in the gorge is that our weird electromagnetic environment is messing with electromagnetic tuners in our brain.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're able to perceive things that are always present, but we're just not calibrated
We
to
weren't aware
perceive.
before. We weren't aware of it before. I feel
Exactly.
like, yeah, I feel like, no, this goes along, James. I interview a lot of people, we talk about the Great Awakening, and this goes along with everything you're saying, because why didn't people see 11:11 before, or 22:22? Why didn't people see the signs before? Because everything's, the universe is mathematical,
Hmm.
it's all made up of numbers. So now, as people start to raise their vibration, they see it. And that's what
Hmm.
I think, this is just my opinion only. I mean, that's what I feel like is happening in the gorge. They go in there and the energy's different and they're connecting with that energetic,
Hmm.
how excited. Have you seen, can I just ask this? Have you seen like, tell me, have you seen Sasquatch, or have you seen the Black Panther, or talk to
Well,
talk to
let
me.
me tell you about a couple of, I have had some unusual experiences. We'll start off there.
Okay.
There's this one area in particular that has captivated my attention and imagination. We call it Broke Leg Barrows. It is this lava field. Uh, it's 8,000 years old, so all the lava is cooled, and it's basically this jumble of jagged rocks. It's an area about the size of the island of Manhattan.
Okay.
So, it's probably 9 miles by 4 miles, something like that.
Right.
And it, so, you talked a little bit about my bio. I have been doing land navigation, map and compass work professionally since I was 19 years old, a soldier in the Army. And so, and then of course, as a wildland firefighter and a search and rescue EMT, I know my way around in the woods. I am an extremely competent uh, wilderness navigator. I know what I'm doing, right? And this area, so I've, been on glaciers and deserts and jungles and forests, like you name it, I know my way around. And in fact, if I don't, people die or get hurt. Like that is literally the stakes of, how I've had to calibrate my skills in this regard. And I've been in Broke Lake Barrows, and it's this crazy jumble of rocks. There are these micro canyons and small caves all over the place. They're covered with moss. There's this unearthly silence because these rocks, um, eat the sound, and there are these trees that have been there for a long time, but they're sort of stunted because it's a really difficult environment. People have gone missing in this area.
Is
Part
that
of the
where
reason is
the I saw in your notes that there was a hiker that went missing. Is that where he
yes,
went missing?
yes, dozens of folks have gone missing here. Part of the reason is that compasses don't work properly here. Cell
Okay.
phones don't work here. And it is a really disorienting area. Well, I won't go into all the gnarly details. I was in there flying my drone and getting some footage of the area. And I was in one place where I knew where I was. And for a guy like me, when I'm in the wilderness, there's a number of things going on in the background, like I'm tracking the sun position and my pace count and landmarks and all these different kind of things. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I know where I'm at. I'm going to walk this way for a certain distance, and then I'm going to take a 90-degree turn and walk west for a distance. And I found a new area, and I thought, oh, this is another cool place. I'm going to fly my drone here too. And then suddenly, like waking up from a dream, I realized that I had been bounced back to the place where I had started. Now, what you have to understand
Oh
is
my
for a guy
God.
like me that never gets lost in the woods, like it just is something that has never doesn't happen to me. Like I can't even remember the last time I've been lost in the woods. For me to be that disoriented, like I was
You
hundreds
jumped
and
timelines, James.
I well, something happened.
I think
I
you
was
jumped timelines.
incredibly befuddled. Like it was so bamboozling. I couldn't believe. I mean, like for me, like when you see a face, you recognize it, right? For me,
Right.
places in the wilderness are the same. Like if I've been in a place, I know it.
Yeah.
And I was just in this place, what I thought was 15 minutes ago, turns out to be 2 hours ago.
Uh-oh.
And I was there looking at it, thinking I was in a place that I had never been that was so interesting that I should fly my drone there. And like I said, like waking up from a dream, I found that, oh my gosh, I've already been here. And like the exit, the way out and my vehicle are just over there. And it was the most unsettling experience. First of all, like for me to be that lost, inconceivable. For me to be that turned around, inconceivable. For me to be in a place that I had been in just a few moments before and not recognize it,
Well,
inconceivable.
what do you think happened? Do you think they moved you because they didn't want you to go in that area? Do you think you were
Well,
teleported?
that is I've wondered that many times. And so this area, we've got a lot of Bigfoot sightings out in this area, a lot of strange phenomenon. People have gone missing, and no, like I've been on scores and scores and scores of search and rescue missions, and we never call in the military except for maybe to bring in a chopper. When people get lost here, the most elite military search and rescue teams show up to help find them. Really, really weird. Like that doesn't make sense, right? And when I reflect on my experience, my first experience was like, whoa, what just happened to me? And the second experience was like, wow, if something didn't want me to go deeper in there, this was probably the most benevolent way to bounce me back to start, keep me safe, and say, not today, son. This is not for you.
Right.
And, like this place is so vast and so rugged. There are no trails in there. You could hide 7 Ewok villages of Sasquatches out there and no one would ever see it, right? And so like that was a really for me a very tangible experience of like, wow, something happened here. My natural navigation sense was completely switched off. I
Yeah.
was seamlessly edited into a new reality where I don't know what happened between A and B. So that's just one experience. And it's not, I mean, like there's no creature to be seen or anything like that. But to me, very exciting. I had been hearing for months and months and months all these other people telling me about their unique experiences. And here was one that for me, I know was real, that something happened to me out there and I can't say what. And the most delightful thought was that what a benevolent way to, like, if you had a security that you didn't want someone in, this is the most benevolent way that you could have possibly just
Yeah.
gently lifted them and put them back at start and said, not for today.
How long have you
So
been there, James? How many years have you and your wife been there at the
So I
store?
came out to Washington State in the late 80s with the military, and I had been down to the Gorge,
Okay.
a couple of times, many times, in fact. But we moved down here in 2021,
Okay.
when my mother-in-law Margie passed away.
How has it changed you? I can just tell
Oh,
it's like changed you so much.
well, the whole experience, like this paranormal reporting program, like we didn't know what we were going to get. And it wasn't like a scientific endeavor. It's like, this is really interesting stuff. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
And it has been incredibly rewarding. I've worked in corporate environments and was pretty well done with that when the opportunity to run our family business came up. And so it was exciting to come down here and do that. But, I've talked to literally hundreds of people and they've confided me. Oftentimes, I am the second person they've ever told about their experience. The first person they told said they were crazy and they shut up about it. And
Oh,
then because we've created a safe place where you're going to be listened to and we're going to take you seriously and we're going to oftentimes follow up and investigate on your experiences, it's been really uh, incredibly rewarding and satisfying. For many folks, it's very cathartic to talk about these experiences. They don't have, like, oftentimes their family will tell them they're crazy.
yeah.
And so they really, like, their normal support structures are gone.
Yeah.
And to be believed is a really big deal. And, I think some of the best ways to bring this to life is to talk about this creature we call the Klickitat Ape Cat. And so, just at a high level, we've had over 130 reports of an enormous Black Panther-like creatures.
How big?
Uh,
How big is he?
so 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder.
Oh,
Yeah. And
oh,
so
wow.
this is a creature that is bigger than any cat living on Earth today. It's bigger than a tiger, right? Now, of course, we have many cougars that live in the area. They're typically no more than 24 inches at the shoulder. Tigers might be 3 feet, but these creatures are reported to be 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder and anywhere between 900 and 1,300 pounds.
More than one. They're like more than one of these.
Sightings have been going on since 1968, and the average lifespan of a big cat is no more than 15 or 20 years. We've had multiple reports of people seeing it with kittens and cubs.
Oh,
So it appears to be a reproducing population. And so I had said that there are no living cats that are this big. We've done some research, and there was a cat that lived here in North America. It's a North American lion during the Ice Age. It's believed to have gone extinct 10,000 years ago. Its scientific name is the Panthera atrox, and it is a incredibly well-known animal because over 80 skeletons have been pulled out of the La Brea tar pits down in California. But this creature, its range was all over Western United States, up into Canada, and all the way into the Eastern United States as well. This creature was 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder, weighed 900 to 1,300 pounds. I have a replica skull of it in my store, and it is huge. I mean, it is
oh my God.
gigantic.
Oh my God.
And so we know that it is genetically possible for cats to be that big, this big. And we know it's possible for them to be that big exactly here. These cats lived alongside human beings here in Washington State 10,000 years ago, believed to have gone extinct. Um, so what is this thing? Well, and why do we call it the ape cat? Um, so we've had, like I said, 130 reports. A, a number of those are by law enforcement officials,
Oh,
so
okay.
police officers, things like that. Um, and the first report that I ever got, a guy came into the store, and it took him 45 minutes to work up the courage to tell me what he experienced. And he saw this enormous cat, black fur, long tail, and it was completely unafraid of him. It watched him for 5 minutes. And in fact, that's a feature of many of these stories, is these cats are unafraid of humans. They will sometimes
That's
even,
weird, huh? That's
yeah,
odd.
well, a cougar will abandon a fresh kill at the mere sound of human voices. So its meal ticket, it will run away from if it hears humans. These
Ooh.
cats seem to be unafraid of them. There have been no hostile encounters where humans have been harmed or even endangered. Um, and as we look at the Native American legends, there is a race of what they call supernatural panther protectors, underwater panthers. When the Native Americans talk about things being from the underwater realm or the sky realm or the under earth realm, they're talking about a being that has 1 foot in our physical world and 1 foot in the spiritual world. And these Mishepashu, is what they're called. They're these underwater panther creatures, and they're said to look like a panther with the face of a man, which
Oh
is
my
really
God.
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. And we've had, so of those 130 reports, about half of them say that this creature is 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder, very muscular. And half of them say that it's just a really, really big cat. Like they don't say 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder. What's interesting is that that Panthera atrox was sexually dimorphic, meaning the females were always smaller than the males.
Mm.
And so in an observed population, you would expect half of them to be big and half of them just to be um, big, like half enormous, half just big.
Right.
Um, and so it's a 50-50 split on that size. People will say like it jumped in front of my car and it was as tall as the hood of my Jeep Rubicon, or it was as tall
Wow.
as my Honda Escort, like or Ford Escort. And
Right.
so like we know like they're comparing it to something in the environment. Um, and then a handful of reports, and importantly, the first report said that it had a face that looked like a monkey. And this one, like, we take in these reports and we take everyone seriously. And I was like, whoa, a cat with a face like a monkey, like, how does that happen? Like I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Mhm.
Basically, what they will say is that it has a shortened snout. And to be sure, this is only like out of those 130 reports, maybe 10 of them talk about this monkey-like face. It may be we're talking about different creatures or some type of shape shifting or who knows what we're talking about. But shortened snout, no hair on the face, so a leathery, like skin like face, and then intelligent ape-like eyes.
Interesting.
And so, like, and I'll go back and forth on this one myself. Like, I think, oh, maybe it was a reporting error or some type of trick of light or something like that. And then somebody credible will come forward and say, yeah, I'm a fire crew chief, and we were fighting forest fires out between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. And the whole team saw this creature with the ape-like face. And we didn't know what we were going to do if it showed up in our camp because we were on a 3-day deployment. And
Yeah.
so, like, it's definitely a part of the stories that we hear is this ape-like face, but it's certainly not the experience of all the people.
Mm.
So this guy came in, he told me his story. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. It was the first time I'd ever heard of anything like that. And so the next morning, I was talking with my employees about it. And Missy, she she's a gal that's as honest as the day is long. Like she doesn't feel comfortable even playing practical jokes on her coworkers because that's kind of like lying and that's not her deal, right?
Mm.
And so as I was describing this creature, she started shaking, like having this very strong emotional response.
Oh, wow.
And she said, James, I've seen that thing myself. I was driving down Klickitat Canyon at dawn, and there was this enormous black cat, black fur, and it was huge, and it had a long black tail. She stopped her car to observe it. She wondered if she should tell the people in the houses nearby that there's this giant predator out there.
Hmm.
And she decided not to, and it's a good thing she decided not to, because when she told her family, they all thought that she was crazy, and they told her that she didn't see a cat, that she had probably just seen a cow.
Yeah.
So think about like
I
this
know.
is a
Doesn't it?
grown woman,
I
right?
know.
And like to imply that she wouldn't know the difference between a cat and a cow.
Yeah.
But that also tells you like just how big the creature was that she
Amazing.
saw when they're saying that. And so it'd be like if you were in your hometown and you saw a red Lamborghini drive by, and you're like, wow, I just saw a red Lamborghini. And you tell your friends, they're like, Lamborghinis are super rare, especially around here. You probably just saw a red minivan. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's a
I want to
part of
bring
what happens.
people don't they don't believe yeah they don't believe him, but I want to bring come back to the Native Americans really quick. We're only got a 45-minute show.
Oh,
I
sure.
want to talk about this really quickly. I just find it really interesting. Of course, I lived in New Mexico for many years, and I was a realtor. I actually got to work with some of the Native Americans selling land. But and I've done a lot of research like you, but what I found and what I'm picking up from what you're telling me, the Native Americans knew about all this stuff, all of it,
Mhm.
and they still do. And when we talk about the ETs like being underground and we talk about the ETs being in the water and the caves and all that different stuff, they knew all this stuff.
Hmm.
A lot, they've just like people have, this is just my opinion only, and I just want to know what you feel about it. I just feel like, they've been trying to tell the world these things for a long time, and they've kept a lot of this in their tribes and just passed it down through, generation through storytelling, that type of thing. But they've been aware of all of these things, and now we're just, oh, they're finally coming on the news and saying, yeah, there are ETs in the ocean. I just want to get your take on that. That's all. I just want to know what you feel
Yeah,
about.
well, to be sure, we've had witnesses come to the store and say they've seen things flying above the water and
Mm.
then of the river and then diving into the river and seeing the lights under the water. So we've got transmedium craft here in the gorge as a reported phenomenon. But in terms of the Native Americans, I think what happened is that when science got kicked off back in the 1700s, 1600s, there was a tension with the church. And if you claimed to do anything other than material stuff, like if you got into the spiritual stuff, the church would literally kill you. So, like, as a survival mechanism, scientists of the time said, nope, we're not dealing with any spiritual matters. We're just dealing with the stuff that we can measure, right? And so that kind of got warped and convoluted to scientists having a tradition of the measurable stuff is the only stuff that is real,
Mm.
right? And there's a lot of problems with that. And that whole system of materialism is starting to shake and wobble. And those people who are really studying it at the quantum level, at the consciousness level, are finding, yeah, materialism is not a very good model of the universe. It has so many limitations. It's failing in a lot of important ways. And in fact, it's really not a viable model of how the what reality really is. And it makes sense. Like any kind of measurement is an abstraction of the experience. Like no one sees numbers. Like when I'm talking to you, I don't see, numeric values for the color of your hair. What I see is the color of your hair. And so what scientists now get confused is they think their numbers, their abstractions, their representations of reality are more real than the actual thing that you're seeing, right? Than your actual experience. It's crazy when you
It
realize
really is. It really
what's
is.
going on there.
Yeah.
Native Americans don't have that warp, that mental trick that they needed to do to stay alive. Well, they kind of did because once white people showed up, you get your kids taken away and sent to boarding schools, and all of that wrung out of them. And so it was a really tragic thing that happened there. But they had many of them have the fortitude to retain their original beliefs and not be swayed by this almost insane way of looking at the universe.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Yeah.
scientists drew a map and then they said the map is more real than the territory.
Yeah.
And like that's just crazy. Like it when you logically look at it, it doesn't make sense. But because there's such a giant weight and all these institutions and authorities behind it, if you question it, like you get pounced on and you lose your funding and all that other kind of stuff. I
Right.
think
But
what's
now,
happening now is we're finding
yeah.
the breaking points in that. And the realities that you and I experience, these more intuitive and spiritual type of things, we're finding, yeah, there's some real reality there. And if you, I think that what your book may be doing is, okay, I've moved past materialism as the dominant thought structure. Now let's find ways that we can utilize this new way of looking at the world with real tools that can be effective in bringing important changes to our lives.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, you're right because you're absolutely right on. You're right on, James, because once I started bringing in the light every day and connecting with the divine source, you can call it energy, you can say God, you can say the love vibration, then it fills you up on the inside and you're not looking for material things or other people to fulfill you.
Hmm.
That's the whole key to this whole thing. And that's why, thank you for saying that. Connection. I can even tell from you, you're a changed person going down there and becoming more spiritual and opening your mind and opening the awareness. And I just want to ask you, we got to get out of here for in a few minutes, but I guess I want to ask you as the last question. What do you see as far as you see the people coming in the stores? Do you see people elevating their consciousness and waking up? They're being more open. Are you seeing a change? Are you seeing a difference?
Yeah, I think we are. And I
Okay.
think that there are other people who come into the store. I'm pretty well known in the Gorge, and I'll go out to charity dinners and stuff like that. And
Nice.
people always want to talk to me about, what's going on. And so many people have told me that they feel like there is a change coming and that they are uh, that a higher vibrational people, and in fact, that whole pyramid on Mount Adams, there's a sense that these angels are protecting this gateway to this more heavenly realm and that there's something going on there. And we're now at a period of acceleration. And again, these are the reports that people are giving me or their impressions or their thoughts. And
Mhm.
it's really delightful to sort of be a hub where this information is coming and people feel comfortable sharing it.
Yeah.
But for sure, um, like this place is just so naturally beautiful.
I'm gonna have to come
Uh,
see you. I'm gonna have to come visit.
oh yeah,
I
you
tell you
do.
what, you guys, his name is James
Shoob-skee.
Szubski. I can't even say it. I don't know why. Anyway, I want you to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they have a question or if they want to come visit. I mean, give out some information about
Sure.
yourself and the store.
So the best place to start is margiesoutdoorstore.com, margiesoutdoorstore.com. And that's like the store's website. We also have a Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube. But coming up next year, we are going to start actually filming investigations of a lot of these reports.
How
We've
fun!
got a team that's made up of myself, a soldier, a psychic, a preacher, and a cowboy. And we're going to go out and
I love it. Oh my gosh.
investigate it. The psychic gal, She goes by the handle Soulshine1111. Her name is Jamie, but she is one of the most powerful mediums and psychics. She's been seeing dead people and helping find their bodies since she was 8 years old. And she's got clients on 5 continents. And she lives here in the Gorge and was a friend of Margie's and is now a friend of mine. And like I said, the whole team is a crew of really interesting people. And we're going to go out on the road and investigate these things. And you can find out all about that if you just follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or check out
And it's
the pages.
margiesoutdoorstore.com.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm so glad. You're gonna have to come back because I want to hear once you start doing some of your discoveries or whatever, once you guys go out there as your team, I want you to come back and you're gonna have to.
We barely scratched the surface today.
Oh my God. James, thank you. God bless. And thank you for all the work you're doing because you are, helping, you're bringing forth the truth and you're helping humanity. And that's awesome. And I, much appreciated, by the way. So
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
you're welcome. All right, you guys, remember to pick up A Guide to Angel Communication and Spiritual Law. If you want a psychic reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com. Everyone, have a fabulous week and God bless.
Hold your head high, the world is coming. Watch the colors lift your soul. Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the